Hello, everyone. My name is Chi Peng, the moderator of this event, and the moderator, the Fan Jiande, Professor Fan, and because he have another meeting, changed his schedule, so I am the moderator today. And our topic of this event is EU taxonomy. And it's a very important issue in the world because just as everybody knows, the EU taxonomy means the European Union's sustainable finance taxonomies, and we call EU taxonomy. Actually, in Asia, especially the ICT supply chain, we are from the TCP Taiwan Climate Partnership. Is by the 8 leading company, global company. They're headquartered in Taiwan. For example, AUO, the display panel company, and the Delta Electronic, TSMC, Microsoft Taiwan, Lion, Acer, and Asus, the Noble company, and also Pekatron. So the leading 8 company, they think the importance of the climate change. So 3 years ago, we organized to Taiwan Climate Partnership, and they also link all of their supply chain. So right now we have about 100 members, and we care about everything about the climate change. I think the EU taxonomy is the most important thing we should care. And so today we have a 4 speaker here. One, actually, I'm in the COP28 Blue Zone right now in our digital cross-screen pavilion. And we have one speaker here is Niven Chen from the KPMG. And also we have 3 speakers online. The first is Serge Giacomotto, and it's very difficult to pronounce. Probably you can let us know. And he's a policy officer of European Commissions. And I know you are a big guy about this policy. And we have a speaker online from Taiwan, is Chen. He's a convener of the Sustainable Finance, Academic of Banking and Finance. And the last one will be the Christian Kind. He is a head of a program, Adelphi. And the 4 speakers are very important in this field. And later on, we will have a panel discussion. So I would like to give the floor to Serge. And Serge, okay, wait a minute. Probably we move to the Niven and Huang. Can you give me our first to talk about the issues from KPMG, please?
Thank you very much, our moderator, Dr. Peng, and distinguished panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, or maybe it's a good afternoon. I'm also in the Blue Zone at COP28. My name is Niven Huang. I am the Managing Director of KPMG Sustainability Consulting. In the last 3 years, I was the ESG head of KPMG Asia Pacific. And regarding to the sustainable finance issues, I think in the last couple of years, more and more Asian financial institutions, they put a lot of effort for delivering the sustainable finance product and service to support Asian industry for kicking off their transformation journey toward low carbon, circular, or environmental friendly. Then I would like to spend a couple minutes by using several slides to address a little bit about the legacy development in Asia Pacific corresponding to the taxonomy of EU on sustainable finance. I would like to highlight a little bit more about the background and why sustainable finance is a must in Asia Pacific. Most of you may already quite fully aware that in Asia Pacific right now is the hotspot of energy consumption, very significant growth in energy demand. So that make Asia Pacific is facing quite also a strong increase on carbon emission. So we are facing carbon constraint. The second one is Asia Pacific right now has the highest population in the whole world. And a lot of sustainable development goals in this region is still facing very challenging situations. So we are something like SDG goals constraint. And then Asia Pacific is the global manufacturing center. We consume a lot of resource for producing the global products. So we also face resource constraints. So climate, carbon, energy, resource, and also sustainable development goal constraint that make Asia Pacific need to do a lot of things, including making a robust policy, and also need to drive a much better finance to enable Asia Pacific for its own journey for transformation. And in Asia, we know that there are a lot of global financial institutions. They do have operation here, and Asia become a very important part of the global foreign direct investment. But the point is, a lot of Western companies, they might have a very good sustainability strategy, but their walking the talk in Asia Pacific is still has a lot of big gap need to be closed. And in Asia, sustainable finance for Asian financial institution is also booming. But very important is lack of professional expertise to design very transparent and with also high integrity sustainable finance and product for supporting Asian business. And based on the Bloomberg latest information for yearly data, if we look at the previous year, then very obvious, the sustainable debt in 22nd is the first ever in the history since the year of 2007 for the first green bond was issued. Then already maintained more than almost 1 decade continuous growth in green bond, social bond, sustainability link bond, etc. But 2022 is the first time to decline from the previous year. And then based on right now is almost December, still just only 2 to 3 weeks, it will be end of 2023. And based on the latest data, it seems a very high possibility that we are going to have the reality that a second year decline the sustainable debt comparing to the total issues in 2021. And because of the CSRD and also the SF Sustainable Finance Disclosure Regulation, SFDR, and in this June, there is also another new directive, CSDDD, etc. And then more and more regulation mandated the carbon accounting for the listed company in a lot of global or regional or national stock exchange. And so more and more complex regulation that mandated the financial institutions need to become much more transparent for their sustainable finance practice. And then EU taxonomy, we believe that that is the most influential, powerful, but it is also very good for building up the common language and to raise the bar for all of the financial institutions to disclose in a much more transparent way with the information can ensure that what they have already done for delivering their sustainable finance product and service can have the same language to demonstrate their performance data. And then in Asia Pacific, you can see that also a lot of corresponding regulation has been already launched or in the pipeline to be launched in the near future very soon. And based on the EU taxonomy structure, there are 6 of environmental objectives. If you look at the COP28, at the first couple of days, then there is one pledge regarding to the triple nuclear power by 2050. But based on this 6 environmental objective, you can see nuclear power will be low carbon energy, no doubt. But would it be green? Might have a quite serious concern. If you look at the EU taxonomy, the 6 environmental objective regarding to the water and marine resource and also protection of the healthy ecosystem. So the banker, when they want to deliver the sustainable finance, the loan to the nuclear power plant, to private sector, or even the state-owned company, then how to balance the 6 environmental objectives will become an issue. Then we need to make sure that the banker do have the capability to evaluate the risk abatement and mitigation measure, whether that can all ensure that the risk can be acceptable. In Asia Pacific, based on the EU taxonomy in the last couple of years, then on this slide, you can see that the left-hand side is the EU taxonomy timeline, and the right side is the timeline for EU taxonomy's development in Asia Pacific. If we will look back almost the last 8 years, back to 2015, I think China is also one of the very leading countries in Asia Pacific to build up a lot of green finance, green bonds, and a lot of the related guidelines or regulation corresponding to EU taxonomy. Maybe not exactly, but their journey can also highly link to the global development on taxonomy. And then in Asia Pacific, then based on the current latest update, Japan right now, they have decided not to adopt a very strict, well-defined taxonomy just corresponding to the EU taxonomy, but they already just announced some of the guidelines regarding to the green finance. And ASEAN, they have already built up a collective, collaborative force and try to issues that is the most common guidelines on Asia Pacific, ASEAN countries taxonomy. Then I would like to skip this slide and come back later. I would like to just provide you some of the insight about ASEAN taxonomy, the latest update. In this June, ASEAN already launched the version 2 ASEAN taxonomy. And then this is the deliverable based on the ASEAN taxonomy board that was launched in March 2021, almost 2 years ago. And then in November 2021, the version 1 ASEAN taxonomy was launched. And then based on the current ASEAN taxonomy version 2, then ASEAN also introduced and integrated one very important essential criteria that is a focus on social aspect. And then ASEAN's taxonomy is very not exactly the same as the EU taxonomy. I can use this slide to demonstrate you that they focus on 4 environmental objectives. Comparing to EU taxonomy, there are 6 environmental objectives. Even 4, there is also some very different items included in ASEAN taxonomy. But the most important 2 is completely the same as EU taxonomy, is adaptation and mitigation. A little bit different is healthy ecosystem and biodiversity. The number 4 is promote resource resilience and transition to circular economy. Is also similar to EU taxonomy. And the essential criteria, they do have do no harm, to some other environmental objectives. This is similar to EU taxonomy. And then the next one, second criteria is remedial measures to transition. The third one is the social aspect. And they also choose the 6 focus sector listed in the right-hand side of this slide. And then they also focus on 3 enabling sector, include information and communication. That is also very important, just like Taiwan High-Tech Climate Alliance. Their members are all from this sector. The second enabling sector is the professional, scientific, and technical sector. The third one is carbon capture, storage, and utilization. Then based on some quantitative and qualitative criteria, they just divided the project for transformation into several different kind of colors. And the green, of course, that will make this project can be complying with all of the criteria. And the red one is not completely complying with the Asia Pacific taxonomy. And there are also some in between. So that is the amber color. And this is the basic structure for ASEAN taxonomy. And then back to the social aspect, that is the third criteria used by ASEAN taxonomy. It consists of 3 major social aspects. The first one is the promotion and protection of human rights. The second one is prevention of forced labor and protection of children's rights. The last one is the impact on people living close to investment, especially, for example, like indigenous people, rural area. So these 3 key social aspects has been already included into ASEAN taxonomy version 2. Then I would like to give you one example in Asia Pacific, that is a Taiwan case. Maybe Honda can also highlight in more detail later. And Taiwan just conduct this kind of Taiwan taxonomy about 3 years ago, and conducted by Zhonghua Institution for Economic Research and also Taiwan Academy of Banking and Finance. And then they choose 4 sectors, including manufacturing, construction, transportation, and warehousing. The last one is finance. And then this taxonomy, after serious consultation with business sector-specific organization and leading company or some academic opinion leader, and they also try to do everything possible to use some quantitative criteria can be used in the near future by banker for defining whether the sustainable finance is completely related to the sustainability. So the 6 environmental objectives in Taiwan is exactly similar to EU taxonomy. Then after almost 1.5 years consultation, and then almost 1 year's the related policy and regulation preparation, Taiwan government just announced officially the Taiwan taxonomy. I think that can be regarded as phase 1 requirement and regulation end of 2022. So the financial authority right now is moving forward to the phase 2 to covering more industries, and then a lot of sector-specific engagement will be expected. And the very important thing I would like to wrap up in my presentation is a sustainable finance need to deliver positive impact in Asia Pacific, because we are facing carbon constraint, resource constraint, social inequality constraint, and then sustainable finance should be complying with the well-recognized and well-defined framework and standard. So the performance, the assets allocation, capital allocation can be well communicated based on those kind of finance, what kind of impact can be the consequence. The second one is no more superficial by Asian financial institution because of global greenwashing, monitoring, unsustainable finance. That is also the basic driver for EU taxonomy and SFDR in Europe. So we need transparency, consistent standard, and benchmarkable KPI for financial institutions when they want to have the practice in sustainable finance service. And then third point is embeddment and professional expertise will be needed for working the top. So if the banker, they just only follow the guidance and framework, and even there is some quantitative criteria for them to tell whether that can be regarded as sustainable finance based on some ASEAN taxonomy, EU taxonomy, Taiwan taxonomy, etc. But expertise is the most important because that can become the professional, operational, stepwise process and methodology that can be embedded into the financial service. And number four is data and sector-specific engagement for criteria is a very important part of the whole process. So if the company in different kind of a sector that will be covered in the near future by taxonomy, then all of the transparent data disclosed by company, and then that also need to assure the data quality, for example, like the carbon productivity or some intensity KPI, those kind of data, we should have to improve the quality of the existing disclosure. So those kind of data can be based by the banker for their sustainable finance product delivery. Last one is, no matter what kind of a situation, based on the taxonomy, all of the sustainable finance should also need to have some targeting, effective monitoring, and also balanced disclosure. If that the target is achieved, and then the financial institution and banker need to make a much more ambitious new target. But if the target is not achieved, and the banker should be also very honestly to disclose the latest situation. So I think this couple point is from my perspective, and then we will also keep moving for engaging the financial institution in Asia Pacific to support them to move forward and become a much more influential, impactful enabler to support all of the industry to make their transformation journey much more faster, much more impactful. And thank you very much for your listening.
Yeah, thank you, Niven. And a wonderful talk. And you had already pointed out the difference, and especially the regional difference, and also the possibility of a common standard, especially the Asia and the Europe, and also the probably some kind of cooperation and also the impact. So later on in our panel time, we will have some discussion about these issues. So I would like to give the floor to Serge. Yeah, you are online now. Please, Serge, the floor is yours. Hello, Serge. Yeah, please.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, wonderful.
All right. Hello, everyone. So today I would like to speak to you about essentially what the EU has been doing on the field of sustainable finance, and in particular transition finance. But first, let me give you a recap, and I'll really thank Dr. Huang for having done this little recap at the beginning of the presentation. What have we been doing? So from 2018, we put together an action plan on sustainable finance, which laid out key topics that we needed to deliver in order to kickstart the transition, the transition of the financial sector. This transition was not a given. From 2009, there had been the first issuance of a green bond and stable increase in the green bond market, but ESG investing was still pretty much a niche, and we didn't necessarily expect that much more. So we needed to kickstart a revolution. The big issue was, okay, we need to know what is green. So identifying what is green was the first key central piece of this action plan, and that led to the creation of the EU taxonomy, which Dr. Huang already summarized. This taxonomy allows us to identify green investments, and only green investments. Compared to the Asian taxonomy, we do not have this traffic light system with green, amber, and red. We only have green. We have do no significant harm criteria, and that's it. Using that, we mainstreamed this reporting for all actors across the value chain. The CSRD, which we adopted last year, requires corporates to disclose on the basis of the taxonomy. It will be a progressive reporting, first only for the large listed companies, and it will go up until 2027, where and 2028, where SMEs even will start reporting. Only listed SMEs. They're required to report on both their risks and their impacts. So we do vouch for our double materiality approach. Only reporting on financial risks is not enough in order to safeguard our society. So double materiality is our choice. Then there was the SFDR. SFDR is essentially the same. We need to report on, we need financial market participants, investors, to report at product level on their shares of sustainable investment, of taxonomy alignment, depending on the kind of claim that they make for their financial product. And they also need to report on their adverse impacts. So we're talking about greenhouse gases. We're talking about, are they investing in corporates that have activities that do not necessarily comply with the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises or the UN guiding principles, that sort of stuff. And we also developed other tools, the low carbon benchmarks, which are a wonderful tool for the transition. And these benchmarks follow a decarbonization trajectory of -7% year on year. So any financial product that tracks a low carbon benchmark is considered under our framework a product that we can reliably consider as green. And we developed the Green Bond Standard that was adopted last year. We developed also reporting requirements on banks so that they disclose their ESG risks in order to strengthen their risk monitoring framework, and in turn, at some point, maybe change their prudential requirements. And on that basis, using all these tools that we developed and that are still under development, you mentioned the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This directive is still under negotiation, and it will maybe require corporates to develop a transition plan that is aligned with 1.5 degrees. At the moment, the CSRD only requires corporates to disclose whether they have a transition plan. It's not a requirement to have a transition plan, it's a requirement to disclose a transition plan if you have one. So using all these tools, this summer, we finally provided our definition of transition finance. So transition finance, according to the EU, refers to many different types of investments. Investments in certain types of activities that are categorized in the taxonomy. So activities that we consider as transitional. So transitional activities are typically energy-intensive activities. We're talking about steel, cement, transport, these kinds of activities that are not green today, although in the taxonomy we consider everything as green, they are still characterized with this additional qualifier that is transitional. So typically these criteria will be dynamic, they will have to be reviewed. So investments in these activities are considered as transition finance. Investments in portfolios that track a benchmark are considered transition finance, and investments in corporates that have a robust and credible transition plan, which refers to what we already developed in the CSRD. Now, the question is, what is a robust and credible transition plan? And that is a question that we are trying to answer. We will provide more guidance on this. But for the moment, we have also really encouraged financial market participants and corporates, non-financial corporates, to use the various methodologies that have emerged from the markets. So I'm talking about SBTI or the ACT methodology that verify your targets, that make sure that your targets, whether they're short-term or long-term, are aligned with a 1.5 degree future. We consider these methodologies as the way forward, and they provide sector pathways which are which give us a lot of visibility, actually. So using this definition of transition finance, now the question is, well, will that be enough in order to further foster not only green investments, but actually the greening of the economy, as in getting rid of harmful investments and making sure that what is harmful today can become more green? Well, we have to see. There are a few issues. There are worrying trends which warrant well, further actions. So what we are thinking of right now is we need to review all of this legislation, all of these legislations with certain aspects in mind. First, their usability. Is the framework user-centric? Well, it turns out that, you know, the taxonomy, it's a massive achievement. We were the first legislator in the world to develop a framework this big, with this many criteria, this ambitious, with 6 objectives and several levels of environmental performance, substantial contribution, and do no significant harm. It's a lot of work at a very granular level, but it turns out that, well, it's not perfect, and it's therefore quite difficult to use for many actors. So we need to review these criteria. We need to add more activities. We need to see if it can be more comprehensive and more user-centric. We need to also see whether the different pieces of the legislation fit together. If we are requiring banks to report on certain ESG risks, but the corporates do not report on the same metrics, well, there are inconsistencies. So we need to make sure that all of it fits, which is part of this user centricity, this usability or consistency approach. Now, there's also a proportionality approach. We are getting in the thick of the work that we're doing on sustainable finance, and we're seeing some reluctance to disclose on every single KPI, because there are a lot of KPIs. Okay, so how can we make it a little bit more proportionate for certain actors? Do we need to ask the same things of an SME as from a large multinational enterprise? These are considerations that we have to look at a little bit more, and which we may have not necessarily looked at in the past. And finally, a thought that we need to consider is, okay, is it achieving the transition enough? What is missing? In my point of view, I'll speak on my name, I think for instance, we should be looking a little bit more at the Asian taxonomy, which has from the start looked at developing a traffic light system, green, amber, red, because we need to know what is a harmful investment. Right now, we have no framework in the EU to actually define or figure out what a harmful investment is. Sure, we are asking corporates to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions. We're asking corporates to disclose a lot of metrics, but it doesn't give you at a granular level what is harmful. It's not comparable. Doesn't allow you to say this investment is more sustainable or less sustainable than another investment. And comparability is key. So we need to look at that. And at the beginning, I said, if I recall correctly, that sustainable finance has very much been a story of transparency. Also because, well, we cannot ask more than transparency really in the EU if we're a markets-based economy. We cannot force corporates or investors to make particular investment decisions. We can only really suggest that they do by making sure that the information is out there, making them realize what they should do on their own. Cannot force. Well, can we go a little bit more than just transparency is the question that we also need to look at. Should sustainable finance and transition finance become a bit more carrots and sticks oriented? Should there be more incentives within the framework? We thought that transparency could generate a greenium, for instance. Well, why not actually de facto create a greenium by influencing prudential requirements? How much capital a bank needs to keep in its stock, depending on its levels of risks, its levels of sustainability risks. Right now, all of this is not necessary. This is not really standardized. It's at the discretion of the supervisor. So we need to look at that a little bit more. It's going to be a difficult topic, but I think it's a topic that that is very, very relevant. Yeah. So all in all, in this exchange, I'll do a recap. I looked at what we have done, where we're going, and highlighted some key issues. And I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Serge. Yeah, you make a very clear answer from the Niven Huang, and also give our some instruction about EU taxonomy. And right now, I would like to give floor to the Honda Chen, and he is also an expert in our local area. And actually, I read a lot of his books about EU taxonomy. Honda, please, the floor is yours.
Okay,
You want to share the slide, please?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Huang Chen from the TABF. Taxonomy is an international movement. Not only Europe, but also many countries has developing their own taxonomy. Since taxonomy play an important role in the sustainable finance, it will significantly impact the ICT industry in Taiwan. Okay, why taxonomy matter? Taxonomy is the list of economic activity with performance criteria for their contribution to the environmental objective. And the taxonomy is the formula used to calculate the sustainable KPI. And the taxonomy are used in the investment industry to help drive capital towards certain company or financial products. What's in the taxonomy? There are only about 100 eligible activity in the EU taxonomy, and can be classified into 9 categories, such as agriculture and forestry, manufacturing, energy, transportation, and ICT. But the ICT here is only for the data center service, and not including the ICT manufacturing. Yes, only eligible activities can undergo the TSC process. It means they need to pass the technical screening criteria to be taxonomy aligned. At first, a company need to contribute one of the 6 environmental objectives, and do no significant harms, and need to comply the minimum social safeguard to be taxonomy aligned. And the company report the result in them CSR report, and the banks disclosure them green asset ratio. And Taiwan ICT are non-eligible in the EU taxonomy, and only the eligible activities have a chance to be the taxonomy alliance. So the KPI for the Taiwanese company will be 0. Here's the eligible activity in the EU taxonomy, and you can see there are only 2 activities in the ICT category. And here is the formula for companies' sustainable KPI. This is the portion of the turnover aligns with the taxonomy. And in the formula, we can see the taxonomy aligns turnover will be the numerator, and the old turnover will be the denominator. And for example, a company have 3 products. Hello, did you hear me?
hear you, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
For example, a company have 3 products. The turnover for the product C1 is 25%, C2 is 25%, and the C3 is 50%. And only the product C3 pass the technical screening criteria. Also, the turnover, the taxonomy alliance for this company is 50%. Here's the formula for Huang's taxonomy KPI. For example, the fund invested in 3 companies, company A, B, C, and the company's A's KPI is 40%, and the company B is 80%, company C is 10%, but the company A is only 3% of the proportion, and the company B is 50% proportion, and the company C is 20% proportion. So this fund, the taxonomy alliance for this fund is 54%. A company with a low KPI score will be disappearing to the sustainable fund. Okay. This is the formula for bank KPI and then green asset ratios. In the beginning, we need to know only eligible activity have a chance to be taxonomy alliance. And the formula for green asset ratio is the total carbon assets will be the denominator, and the taxonomy alliance asset will be the numerator. And so the bank will have these incentives to lend to the company with a low KPI score. Here's the example. We can see the total assets, eligible assets, and the taxonomy alliance assets for a bank. And the financial institution will have these incentives to invest on company with a low KPI score. And now the Taiwan taxonomy follow the EU taxonomy. And for example, we have 6 environmental objectives, and do no significant harms to other 5 environmental objectives. And we need to comply with the minimum social safeguard. And because there are these eligible activities in Taiwan taxonomy, and will lead to a lower alignment. Our Financial Supervisor Commission aimed to increase the items in the eligible activity, but the ICT products are very diverse, and the lifespan is very short. So it's challenging to expand the eligible actives and design them technical screening criteria. In this July, the Reuters report said most European firms have no revenue or capital expenditure aligned with the EU taxonomy. And the low eligible will lead to low alliance. I think this will happen in the Taiwan ICT industry. We have the same problem. What will impact on Taiwan ICT industry? I think first is the ICT industry will have a very poor sustainable KPI because maybe the entire Taiwanese ICT industry will be 0. The KPI will be 0. And because they have poor KPI, so it's unable to attract sustainable fund to hold these companies' stock. And this company cannot issue green bond or green loan, so then fundraising costs will be higher. Here's finally is my recommendation. First, I think the Taiwan taxonomy or the EU taxonomy should be simplistic and clear criteria for assessment. And second, I think we should focus primarily on the greenhouse reduction as the main environmental goal, with other five listed as do no significant harms and minimal social good. And the third, I think, is the most important. I think the ICT industry can use the green electricity consumption as the KPI because the ICT industry is so diverse and the lifespan is so short. It's very challenging to devise technical screening criteria for them by each. And I think it's also echo the international requirement for the renewable 100. Okay, thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, the Honda Chen, and let us know the ICT industry, what they will meet in the future. But you also mentioned the criteria is just like a burden in the future. Probably later we will discuss this issue later on. So I will give the floor to Christian Kind, the head of the program, adelphi. Christian, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone from Berlin. I'm going to share my slides in a moment. Okay, I can see them on your screen now. I was asked to talk a bit about the role of climate risk assessments in the EU taxonomy, and that's what I'll do. I'll talk a bit about what role climate risks play in the EU taxonomy and how to assess climate risks, what are key steps for a climate risk assessment that conforms to the rules of the EU taxonomy. And I'll try to link a bit, make some links to what this can mean for companies in Taiwan or Asia in general. As I said, I'm speaking to you from Berlin. I'm working for Adelphi, a consultancy that is working a lot for governmental and private clients. I lead a team of 16 people working on climate change adaptation. And overall, we are 350 employees at different offices in Europe, working on a range of topics across the spectrum of sustainability. And we do so in a number of countries around the world. We saw this slide a couple of times already in different forms, but here again, those are the 6 objectives of the EU taxonomy. And climate risk assessments need to play a role for in 2 cases of the EU taxonomy. So if you want to report economic activity as making a significant contribution to the environmental objective adaptation to climate change, you need to conduct a climate risk assessment that shows what are the climate risks, and you need to show how the economic activity is helping you or helping others to adapt to climate change. So that's one of the cases where you need to conduct a climate risk assessment, and the other, what we see much more common use case or requirement for doing a climate risk assessment is to show, to fulfill the do no significant harm criterion that is connected to the goal of adaptation to climate change. So if you have an economic activity that makes a significant contribution to one of the other goals, let's say climate change mitigation, then during the do no significant harm assessment, you need to show different things. You need to show that the mitigation activity does not cause any harm for biodiversity, that it doesn't go against circular economy, and you also need to show that it is in line with climate change adaptation activities. And for this, there's not a clear set of technical criteria that you can just tick, because climate risks are very local and depend on the activity and also the region in which the activities are taken. So to show that the activity that contributes to one of the 5 other environmental objectives, to show that it is in line with adaptation to climate change, that it can deliver its benefits in a changing climate, you need to check whether there's climatic changes that might negatively affect the activity. And those are the 3 key steps. You need to identify whether there are physical climate risks that are material to the activity that can affect it in a significant way. And if in the climate risk assessment, if you come across such physical climate risks, then you're required to assess a range of solutions that can help mitigate these climate risks. And then the 3rd step that is required in the Climate Delegated Act is that you prepare the implementation of a suitable adaptation solution or several solutions. And if you're looking at existing activities, you need to prepare an adaptation plan and show how you would implement it within the next 5 years. And if this is about activities that are new and upcoming, then you need to show how you incorporate adaptation solutions within the implementation. And I should say ahead of time, I think it's very important to do these things, but we also work with companies in Europe to conduct such climate risk assessments, and it does tend to be very time intense, and it also requires a range of expertise that not every company has at its hands. And one of the reasons why it is very time intense, I believe, is the fact that the EU taxonomy or the Climate Delegated Act has very specific requirements for climate risk assessments. The upside of this is that if you follow these requirements, it will be a very high quality climate risk assessment. But the downside, of course, is that it can be very time intense. So the requirements are that you screen climate-related hazards that are listed in the appendix of the Climate Delegated Act. That means you have 28 hazards, and for each climate-related hazards, you need to check, does this affect can this hazard appear where the economic activity takes place, and can it affect the activity in a negative way? You need to work, in many cases, you need to work with climate projections, so outputs of climate models. And the requirement is also that you take into account state-of-the-art science and state-of-the-art methodologies for such assessments. You can read up more about this in the FAQs that were published last year that specified the requirements a bit. And Adelphi, me and a colleague, we also authored a guidebook on recommendations for companies on how to perform climate risk assessment that is in line with the requirements of the EU taxonomy. And if you go about this, really 4 steps that are important. You need to check what is the expected lifespan of the economic activity. If the lifespan is more short-term, then the requirements are different. You need to incorporate less data. If the expected lifespan is more than 10 years, then it is required that you look at different climate change scenarios and how climate-related hazards will develop under these. You need to screen for the climate-related hazards and then use information on sensitivity of the economic activity to analyze the actual climate risk that the activity is facing. And then if there is a significant risk, you're required to identify, assess, and implement adaptation solutions. Here you have an overview on the 28 climate-related hazards that you are required to screen for within the EU taxonomy. And you see there's a wide range, some more specific ones like avalanches, landslides, glacial lake outbursts, so things that are very specific to certain regions, but then also more general climate-related hazards that affect all regions in Europe, really: heat stress, heat waves, storms, water stress, sea level rise. But for every climate-related hazard, you are required to make a check and to document whether this affects your economic activity or not. And now my first attempt at trying to link what's being done in Europe to activities in Taiwan and Asia. So in the FAQs from last December that provided some more details on some of the aspects in the Climate Delegated Act, it said that the depth of the climate risk assessment may vary as long as the depth is sufficient to identify physical climate risks that are material to the activity. And now, so the extent to which risks may exist in the supply chain or in upstream production processes can be weighed up individually for each activity. So if the supply chain of a company in Europe that is reporting on the EU taxonomy, if there are factors in the supply chain that are very important for the operation of the company, maybe there are one or two suppliers in one region in Asia that supply a very specific product or part, then in many cases, these companies will be required to check how far climate risks affect these key suppliers. Because if there's a climate risk to these key suppliers that can cause a disruption in the supply chain that might cause significant negative economic effects on the company reporting in Europe, then the company in Europe would be required to check for climate risks in their supply chain. And what we have seen so far is that, of course, companies in Europe are not going to do these assessments themselves, but what is being done is to ask suppliers to fill out a survey or to supply certain data that will help the company in Europe that is reporting on the EU taxonomy to make a statement on the range of climate risks in their supply chain. Now, the key questions that need to be asked in the climate risk assessment is: has the economic activity been affected by climate-related hazards in the past? That's always a good starting point, especially for economic activities that have a short horizon. Then it's a legitimate and fairly low effort way to look at what has happened in the past. And in some ways, it can be helpful to look deeper into impact chains and look at how different climate-related hazards maybe work together to affect systems that are important for the company, and how climate-related hazards can build cascading risks that affect the company's performance. And then looking into the future for economic activities with a time horizon of less than 10 years, it's important to look at how climate-related hazards, for example, number of heat days are likely to evolve in the next 10 years. And for this, you can look into projections or climate decadal forecasts. And for economic activities with time horizons of more than 10 years, you also need to ask, how can the frequency and the intensity of climate-related hazards, how can they change in the future? So how much more river floods are we going to see next to our production plants? And for this, it is required that you look at a range of scenarios and maybe look at, okay, this is the worst case, this would be the best case. And then it's also important not only to look at the hazard, so at the flood, at a heat wave itself, but it is important to check, okay, if such an event happens, what does this mean for our production process? Will this be negatively affected because temperatures will be too high, because water will come in? Or are our production processes, our production facilities robust enough to withstand such events? And as I said, there's the requirements for the EU taxonomy climate risk assessments are fairly specific. So in the FAQs, there's a number of points on which scenarios to use. I won't go deeper into this, but bottom line is that at least two scenarios on future development of the climate should be looked at. And in the end, you need to answer the question, how material, so how significant might it be, might the potential for adverse consequences from a climate-related hazards be for my economic activity? In some cases, there might be a small adverse consequence, a negative impact on the economic activity, but in the case that it's a very minor consequence, those climate risks can be rated as low. In other cases, they might be rated as medium or high. And here, how do you rate these risks? There's not any guidance on this, but you are required to make a rating of your own choosing. And then for those risks that are more on the medium and on the high side, adaptation solutions need to be developed. Here's just an example of how such a rating might look like. And the rating, of course, needs to take into account different scenarios that we see here. But we have also worked with companies who have, of course, their own risk management system. And then in these cases, it makes sense to build on the systems that are in the company already. And then often we ended up working with a classical risk matrix where you have probability of a certain event and the impact of the event. And as I said, if material climate risks are identified, you're required to assess adaptation solutions. So look at a range of activities, maybe for flood protection, maybe for protection against heat, and check in how far these solutions can help to mitigate this risk. And then you're required to implement at least one solution and write down in an adaptation plan how this implementation would go about within the next 5 years, ideally providing information as well on how to monitor the success of such a adaptation activity. In summary, and maybe a little lookout and a little bit of advertisement, in my perception, the taxonomy is just taking off among the larger groups of companies within Europe. So we are expecting to see a lot of climate risk assessments for the EU taxonomy reporting in the first half of, sorry, this is a typo, in the first half of 2024. Our impression was that this year it was a lot about understanding the regulation, about finding out which economic activities are taxonomy eligible. And we've talked to companies who said, okay, we'll wait another year before we will try to go for alignment of CAPEX or OPEX of economic activities. And for showing this alignment, climate risk assessments will be required in many cases. And as I said, in those cases where companies strongly depend on key suppliers in their supply chain, then these downstream companies will be contacted to make contributions to the risk assessment. And this will apply to companies within Europe and, of course, outside of Europe. And what we are doing right now is supporting companies in Europe to develop taxonomy-aligned climate risk assessment. And that's something, of course, we are keen to offer to interested companies outside of Europe as well, if this should be necessary. And in some cases, it makes sense to do this for individual companies, but we've also worked with companies that are clustered in a certain industrial estate and to make some economies of scale for these climate risk assessment. And in some cases, it might also be useful, might also be interesting for business associations to do a climate risk assessment for a sector that then companies within the sector can build on. What we also offer is to check existing climate risk assessments for taxonomy compliance and provide recommendations on how to update these existing assessments so that they fulfill the taxonomy requirements for climate risk assessments. Thank you, everyone, and looking forward to our discussion now.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. And what you talk is open my mind. And because before that, we only know some kind of the mitigation, and you talk about something about adaptation. Thank you very much. And even Huang, have a seat there. And actually, we have about 20 minutes. And actually, by myself, I still have lots of questions because we talk about regional difference. How can we have a kind of the platform, knowledge sharing about this one? So I'm wondering, each one can talk something to after this four very good, wonderful, because I heard a lot of the EU taxonomy. However, this time is my the best time to know everything about this. And I found still have lots of problems because, for example, country to country, regional to regional, how can we have some kind of cooperation in the future? Maybe I can give the floor to Niven Huang first, and then later on to Serge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other three distinguished panelists has already highlighted very good and informative messages for us to consider. For example, like the Serge, you mentioned that the not just only taxonomy, but the transition plan by all of the company. You know, if you cannot achieve a very high standard that will be eligible to taxonomy, but the transition plan is also very good for us. You know, we can just leverage the framework, criteria, and methodology of the EU taxonomy and every country's ASEAN's taxonomy. Then every company, I think you are going to have a very good supporting structure for guiding you to make your own transition plan, but should be also very ambitious because eventually you're gonna also move to the sustainable solution. And the second one is Chris also mentioned taxonomy aligned risk assessment. I think that will be also a very good information for all of the company, no matter that you are covering by the taxonomy, but based on those economic activity and then the environmental objective, the taxonomy aligned risk assessment will be very important part of the company's action toward low carbon, circular, and positive biodiversity for this kind of very new issues or target for company try to do everything possible to move to that direction.
Okay, thank you, Niven. And I will give the floor to Serge.
All right. So we have an expert group called the International Platform on Sustainable Finance that we're chairing. So the European Commission, along with many partner countries, including China, Canada, I think Japan, Kenya. I think we're talking about countries representing at least 80% of global emissions. And what we're doing is trying to harmonize, trying to think together about sustainable finance policies, what's in the toolbox, how to learn from our mistakes, from our from what we've done. And one of the first deliverables that was presented, I think, at the COP last year, or maybe at COP26 in Glasgow, was the Common Ground Taxonomy, which was an exercise, a comparative exercise between China's attempt at a taxonomy, which doesn't follow the same logic, and the European taxonomy. And essentially, it was just looking at the mitigation objective. Also because we didn't have any other objective apart from adaptation, and not do no significant harm. And the logic is, okay, what is the least common denominator? No, the greatest common denominator between the two taxonomies. Where do our criteria happen to be the same for each sector that these taxonomies cover, so that we can figure out, okay, these, according to both the Chinese taxonomy and the European taxonomy, we're both green. So now, building on that, the International Platform on Sustainable Finance, please check the website, is working on expanding this common ground taxonomy, looking at more environmental objectives and at more activities. And I think they're also looking at do no significant harm, but I'm not so sure about that. So right now, the question of harmonizing taxonomies between jurisdiction is a hot one. It's not one that will necessarily be fruitful in, you know, the short term, because it's very, very complicated. Also because a lot of our criteria are dependent on our national legislation. You know, our national legislation are not necessarily replicable. Each legislation has its own history. So we need to kind of think, okay, what is what we can consider as equivalent legislations. It's not an easy exercise, so it will take time.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, the Taiwan, the ICT industry, so we have a dialogue platform with the EU taxonomy, just like your team have a dialogue in the future. Should we need it?
Sure, I think so. This summer we added quite a few activities in the taxonomy. We added a few activities relating to manufacturing of clean technologies, manufacturing of components. So now the ICT sector should be a little bit more covered, or at least its supply chain should be more covered. And now we also have a feedback mechanism where you can suggest to the Commission and to the expert group that works with us on the development of the taxonomy, which activities you think could be worth including in the taxonomy and why, and what the criteria could be. So you can also check on our website. It's a feedback mechanism.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful.
But
okay.
it doesn't presume that anything will be taken on board. We'll just look at it.
Okay. Christian, you raise your hand, please. You speak first. Unmute, please. Unmute.
Thanks for the very interesting contributions. Yeah, I have two questions, a bit for everyone, or two thoughts to discuss for everyone, but maybe also looking a bit in your direction, Serge. Good to see you again. What would you say? What are the key lessons learned from the EU taxonomy development that other actors who might be interested in pursuing such a path should take into account? Because the process, as I remember it, in Europe, it was a very intense process. So I'm sure there's a lot of little learnings along the way. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, wonderful. So, Serge, you want to have feedback or go directly?
If you have any other question, sure. But in terms of lessons learned, I would say take more time.
Okay.
I would say take more time because, you know, once it's in the law, it's very difficult to change the law. So, I mean, we can always change it, but it's going to be a difficult and hard, strenuous process. And, you know, you don't want corporates to start using criteria and then tell them, oh, my bad, we made a mistake. Let's just change the criteria. And they've already put so many things in place to use these criteria. So take more time until you're sure that your criteria are good enough and clear enough. And I think in many sectors, our criteria are not there. So really take more time, even if it's political. And, you know, politics has a way of influencing the way we work and influencing the timelines. Even if it's political, try to take your time. There's no reason to rush a file like that. Even if corporates really, really want the criteria as soon as possible, it's better for them not to have criteria than to have bad criteria.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to echo what you just mentioned, that it is a very complex journey, and then should be patient, not to rush, and of course that lot of engagement, consultation will be the case, will be needed. So according to my observation for the process for making the taxonomy, no matter that it's in Taiwan or in other Asian countries, we found out that the most of the businesses, they don't understand what is going on, you know, and then a lot of debate about the criteria, and then how to justify the quantitative data can be very good for criteria setting. And then some of the debate will also, when in the process for making the taxonomy, a lot of transition for the journey of the transition. Sometimes the company will mix up everything and confuse a lot. So the much more patient for classifying what it is, what is not, and in the engagement and consultation process, I think that is very important for Asian business. And then we also need to encourage the Asian business to participate much more aggressively into the process for making the new criteria for taxonomy issues.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful idea. Probably next year we should meet in Esaberet for COP29. We will invite you to join face-to-face. Okay, I would like to give the floor to Honda Chen, and maybe you have some of the conclusion by your thinking. I would like to thank you. You studied the Taiwan IC industry already, and is a very interesting goal, and we should follow. Yeah, please.
Okay. I think the EU taxonomy is too complicated. Even the Asian taxonomy also too complicated. I think like a PhD student to work on them dissertation, and then each company need to make a report to them CSR report. So I think the taxonomy should be simplicity and clear criteria for assessment. And my second opinion is the background for each country is different. So for Taiwan or Asia, it's difficult to copy the EU taxonomy. So I think each country should respect other countries' rule or standard. Okay, that's my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, Serge, maybe you can answer the simple questions. The simple, make it simple, but sometimes it's also difficult. Yeah, Serge.
So I'm sorry, I didn't really get the question. If there is any.
Honda mentioned he hope maybe because right now it's too complicated.
Yeah.
To understand, and so each company sometimes they were confused. So I'm wondering, what's your opinion to make it simple?
So I think there's something pretty ironic there, because the points. So the irony is that the taxonomy the taxonomy's point is actually a simplification tool. It's a tool to essentially rationalize, to streamline the number of KPIs that companies, financial market participants need to disclose in order to assess their sustainability. At the end of the day, thanks to the taxonomy, you end up with one number, well, a couple of numbers, to assess the level of greenness. It's taxonomy alignment. You have one number. With the CSRD, you end up with a huge number of different KPIs: greenhouse gases, energy consumption. Do you have a transition plan? Water emissions? A huge array of different KPIs, which at the end doesn't even tell you whether you're green or not. It just gives you a picture of a company. So it's pretty ironic that the taxonomy, which aims to essentially do all the work for the company by saying, okay, do you comply with this, with all these criteria? If you do, then you're green, and you have only a few numbers to disclose and not a huge array of numbers. Even though it aims to simplify, do the work for the companies on their behalf, it has become more complicated than any other tool. So I do agree with Mr. Chen that it is too complicated, because the criteria right now are, some of them, too complicated. And yeah, we do need to simplify them. For instance, Christian Kind's criteria on the vulnerability risk assessment for climate adaptation, I'm sure that for certain sectors, we could have a criterion that is more straight to the point. We could have something that is, okay, do you do this? Do you have this? Do you have a certain proof that you're in a particular risk-free zone or whatever, for instance, the building sector? And then it could be a lot simpler. So yeah, we can improve it. I don't think it's the taxonomy's fault. I think it's a human fault. It's not a problem of the tool. It's a problem of, yeah, we need the time to improve it.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, today's talk and also your sharing is very fruitful for our knowledge about the EU taxonomy. And so I would like to thank you. And, it's our first time in COP20. In COP, we have a Blue Zone pavilion. And I hope in COP29 or COP30, we still have a chance to discuss with you. Beside the COP, we still have lots of chance. Thank you all of the guests. And thank you very much. Hope see you online or face-to-face. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, wait a minute. Take a photo, please. Niven, please stand up. Take a photo. Take a photo by using my phone. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, first photo, 1, 2, 3. Okay, second photo, 1, 2, 3. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Taxonomy. Bye-bye.
Take care.